Hi.
Alright, so let me just put this out there. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get roped into a fake marriage. But life throws some wild punches, and this was a knockout. It all started when I met Pia. I worked maintenance at this apartment complex, fixing leaky faucets and patching up drywall when tenants decided to throw fists at each other during football season. Pia was a live-in caregiver for some old guy in one of the units. Sweet lady, quiet, kept to herself, always polite when I passed by. Then one day she cornered me in the hallway. And I mean literally cornered, hands wringing, eyes darting like she was about to confess to a crime. "I need your help," she blurted out. Now, I'm a simple guy. Help usually means lifting a couch or reaching something from a high shelf. But Pia, she hit me with something else entirely. "I need you to marry me." I laughed. Like actually laughed out loud. "Yeah, good one." She didn't laugh back. That's when she told me everything. The old man she had been taking care of had passed away, and since her work visa was tied to her job, she was about to get deported. She had been sending money back home to her mother and little sister, who depended on her. Without a job, without a visa, she was screwed. "And you want me to, what? Just marry you? Out of nowhere?" I asked. She nodded. "I'll pay you." That sobered me up real quick. I wasn't some saint, but I also wasn't the kind of guy to sell my last name like it was a used car. But then Pia hit me with the emotional sucker punch. "I know this is crazy, but I have no one else. I can take care of you too, cook, clean, whatever you need. It's just 2 years. After that we can divorce and you'll be compensated. No trouble, no mess." 2 years. That's what she kept saying. I told her I needed time to think. And I did. I spent the next 2 days rolling it around in my head. On one hand, I didn't want to get involved in something that could land me in legal trouble. On the other hand, it was just 2 years and she was desperate. And if I was being honest, there was something about Pia, this fire in her, this determination, that made it hard to just walk away. Then, right as I was leaning towards saying no, she pulled another move. She showed up at my place. Unannounced. "You haven't answered me," she said, standing in my doorway. "Please." And just like that, my life took a turn I never expected. I wish I could say I made my decision with some deep moral reasoning. That I weighed the consequences, thought about the risks, and came to a smart, calculated choice. But the truth? I looked at Pia standing in my doorway, eyes big and desperate, and I caved. "All right," I said. "I'll do it." The way she exhaled, it was like I had just lifted a 100-pound weight off her chest. She didn't hug me or do anything dramatic, just nodded like she was holding back tears. "Thank you," she whispered. And just like that, I was engaged to a woman I barely knew. The rules of our fake marriage. Pia came prepared. She had an entire plan mapped out. We had to make it look real for immigration, which meant a shared bank account, joint bills, photos together. "People get investigated for fake marriages," she said, pacing in my tiny apartment like she was strategizing for war. "We have to look real even when no one's watching." She laid down the rules. We would live together. My one-bedroom place wouldn't cut it, so we'd have to move. She would take care of the household. Cooking, cleaning, whatever was needed to make it seem legit. No relationships with other people. Immigration looks for that, she said. We had to know each other's lives inside and out. Favorite foods, birthdays, childhood stories, everything. She was dead serious about this. I had agreed, so I figured I'd go along with it. What was 2 years, right? The wedding. We kept it simple, courthouse, 2 witnesses, my buddy Mark and her friend Linda. Pia wore a white dress, nothing fancy, just something simple and elegant. And I'll be honest, she looked stunning. I don't know what I expected from our wedding, but standing there saying those vows I felt weird. Like I had actually gotten married. Even though this was just a deal, even though it wasn't real, there was something about looking into her eyes while saying, "I do," that made my stomach twist a little. Afterward we went to a small restaurant, had dinner, and then moved into our new place. That first night in our apartment, I caught Pia staring at our wedding photo, the one we had to take to make it look official. "Everything okay?" I asked. She turned quickly, shaking her head. Yeah. Just tired. I let it go. After all, this wasn't real. It was just business. At least that's what I thought. I had no idea what I had just gotten myself into. At first, things were fine. Our marriage ran like a business deal, two people living under the same roof, playing our roles when needed. Pia stuck to her word. She cooked, kept the place spotless, even reminded me to pay bills before I could forget. I guess it was her way of making sure I wouldn't back out. I won't lie, coming home to a hot meal and a clean apartment wasn't bad. But something about Pia made me uneasy. She was too good at this. Too rehearsed. She would sit with me in the evenings and ask personal questions like she was studying for a test. What's your favorite childhood memory? What's your biggest fear? How do you like your coffee? She memorized everything, but it felt clinical, like she was building a case file on me. Meanwhile, I barely knew anything about her. Whenever I asked about her past, she dodged or gave short, rehearsed answers. What was your childhood like? I asked one night. She barely looked up from the dishes. Normal. That's it? Normal. Nothing special, she said quickly. It didn't sit right with me, but I figured she just didn't like talking about it. Then little things started adding up. The secrets start slipping. One night, Pia was on the phone speaking in rapid Tagalog. I didn't think much of it until I heard her say my name. My ears perked up. I caught a few words in English. He believes me, it's fine. I stepped into the room, making it clear I was there. She turned fast, her face stiffening like she'd been caught. Who was that? I asked. She hung up quickly. Just my sister. You said my name. She let out a short laugh. We were just talking about you. She asked if you were nice to me. It didn't sound right, but I let it go. That was mistake number one. The mysterious money. A week later, I noticed a stack of cash in her dresser drawer. Thick. Like way more than what I expected her to have. Pia, I asked one night, where are you getting money from? She stiffened. I saved before. You told me you were broke. That's why you needed to marry me. She paused, then laughed awkwardly. I meant I didn't have enough to stay here. This is just some savings from back home. It was a lie. I knew it was a lie. But I didn't press. That was mistake number two. The sudden disappearances. Then, she started disappearing. Not for long, just an hour or two at night. She'd say she was going for a walk, but when I asked where, she'd be vague. Just around. One night, curiosity got the best of me. I waited 10 minutes after she left, then followed. She walked 3 blocks down and met a man. I froze. They talked closely, Pia's hands moving fast like she was explaining something. The guy, tall, well-dressed, listened, nodding. Then he handed her something. An envelope. My stomach twisted. She stuffed it in her purse, glanced around like she was making sure no one saw, then walked away. I got back home before she did, my mind racing. When she returned, I asked, "Where'd you go?" She barely hesitated. Just a walk. Lie. I forced a smile. Alone. Yeah. Lie. I wanted to press, but I bit my tongue. That was mistake number 3. And mistakes were starting to add up. At this point, I knew something was off. Pia wasn't just hiding things, she was actively lying. But I played dumb. If she was keeping secrets, I needed to know why. So, I started paying closer attention. The late-night calls. It wasn't just the disappearances. Pia was on the phone a lot. Late at night. Always speaking in Tagalog, always whispering. One night, I pretended to be asleep while she sat at the edge of the bed, phone pressed to her ear. I told you, just wait. No, I can't do that yet. He doesn't know anything. I stayed still, my heart pounding. He doesn't know anything? Who was she talking about? Me. I shifted slightly, making the mattress creak. Pia spun around so fast you'd think I had caught her stealing. Oh, she said, forcing a smile. Did I wake you? Who are you talking to? My voice came out rough, groggy. No one, she said quickly. Just a friend from home. Lie. She hung up fast and climbed into bed, but I could feel her tension, the way she kept her body stiff and still. I didn't sleep much that night. The mysterious guy returns. A few nights later I followed her again. This time she met the same guy in a parking lot behind a gas station. This wasn't some casual conversation. Pia was upset, her hands waving, her voice rising. I stayed in the shadows, my stomach in knots. The guy finally grabbed her arm, and she yanked away before storming off. He just stood there, watching her leave. I barely made it back before she did. When she walked in, I pretended to be watching TV. Hey, I said casually. How was your walk? She hesitated for a fraction of a second. Good. Lie. I turned back to the screen. You sure? You look kinda tense. I'm fine, she snapped. It wasn't like Pia to snap. That's when I knew, this wasn't something small. The envelope. That night when she went to shower, I did something I'd never done before. I searched her purse. My hands were shaking, but I had to know. And there it was. The envelope the guy had given her. I pulled it out, heart pounding. Opened it. Cash. A lot of cash. And a note. This isn't enough. You know what you have to do. I stared at it, my pulse hammering. What the hell had I gotten myself into? I sat there, staring at the note, my mind racing. This isn't enough. You know what you have to do. What the hell was Pia involved in? Was she in debt? Owing money to the wrong people? Or worse, was she scamming me? I shoved the envelope back into her purse just in time. The bathroom door creaked open, and Pia stepped out in one of my shirts, towel drying her hair. She froze when she saw me sitting there, eyes locked on her purse. Something flickered across her face. Worry. You okay? She asked. I forced a smile. Yeah. Just thinking. She nodded slowly but didn't move. Like she was waiting for me to say more. When I didn't, she walked past me and grabbed her purse off the table, setting it on the shelf like she was hiding it. That was the moment I knew, she knew I was catching on. A plan in motion. I needed answers, but I couldn't just ask her. Pia was a damn good liar. If I confronted her, she'd twist the story, flip it on me, make me feel stupid. So, I decided to play along. The next day I acted normal. I kissed her on the cheek before leaving for work. We never did that, but hey, gotta sell the loving husband act, right? She looked surprised, then forced a smile. You're in a good mood today, she said. Just happy with my wife, I joked. Her smile faltered just for a second. Yeah, she was nervous. That night she cooked my favorite meal. Sat extra close on the couch. Laughed too hard at my dumb jokes. She was covering something up. But I didn't let her see I knew. I just played my part. Smiled. Waited. And later that night when she was asleep, I grabbed her phone. The messages. I had never gone through her phone before. Never thought I'd be that guy. But here I was. Her phone wasn't locked. Either she was careless, or she didn't expect me to check. I opened her messages. Most were in Tagalog, but I found a few in English. Unknown number. You're running out of time. Unknown number. I don't care what he thinks. Handle it. Unknown number. If you don't, I will. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just about money. This was something worse. I had no idea what Pia was caught up in, but one thing was clear. I wasn't just her husband anymore. I was a problem she needed to handle. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, my mind replayed those texts. You're running out of time. If you don't, I will. I needed to know who the hell Pia was dealing with. The next morning I acted normal, kissed her cheek, told her I'd be home late. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She was hiding something. So, I decided to test her. At lunch I texted her. Hey, I'm leaving work early. Should be home by 3. No reply. 15 minutes later, another text. Everything okay? Still nothing. That's when I knew she was up to something and she didn't want me home. Catching her in the act. I left work early but I didn't go straight home. Instead, I parked a few blocks away and waited. At 3:10, a black car pulled up in front of our building. Pia came out fast, looking around like she was making sure no one was watching. Then, that same well-dressed guy stepped out of the car. They spoke in hushed voices. I couldn't hear, but Pia looked frantic. She kept shaking her head, backing up. The guy grabbed her wrist. She yanked away. And then, he handed her another envelope. My blood ran cold. She stuffed it in her bag, looked around one last time and hurried back inside. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Confrontation time. By the time I walked through the door, Pia was in the kitchen, acting like nothing had happened. "Hey, you're home early," she said, forcing a smile. I shut the door and leaned against it, arms crossed. "Who was the guy?" Her smile froze. "What?" "The guy in the black car. The one you met outside." She went pale. I don't know what you're talking about." "Lie." I stepped closer. "I saw you, Pia. Stop lying." For the first time I saw something crack in her. Fear. She swallowed hard. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." She hesitated. Then, just like always, she forced a little laugh. "You're overthinking. It's nothing." But her voice was shaking. And I knew, whatever this was, it was about to blow up in my face. I didn't let it go this time. "Who was he?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Pia exhaled sharply, like she was trying to come up with something fast. Then she shook her head. "It's just someone I owe money to. From before we got married." I crossed my arms. "For what?" She hesitated again. "Too long." Then, "My family. I borrowed money to send home." I stared at her. "And you never mentioned this?" "I didn't think it mattered," she said quickly. "I'm handling it." I let her sit in that lie for a second. Then I dropped the bomb. "I saw the texts." Pia's breath hitched. "I saw what he sent you. If you don't, I will." "What exactly is it that you have to do, Pia?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. She had no excuse ready. For the first time since this started, Pia looked genuinely scared. The breakdown. She turned away, gripping the counter, her back to me. "I never meant for you to find out," she whispered. I clenched my fists. "Find out what?" Silence. Then, in a shaky voice, she said, "I was supposed to marry someone else." My stomach dropped. "What?" She squeezed her eyes shut, like she was trying to force the words out. "The man you saw, he paid me to marry him for a visa. But I backed out. I married you instead." I felt like the room had tilted. "So, this whole thing, this wasn't just about staying in the country?" Pia shook her head fast. "It was at first. But then I met you and She cut herself off. I barely heard the rest. She was lying from the start. Just not in the way I thought. Some other guy had paid her to fake marry him. She took the money, then bailed. And now, whoever he was, he wanted what he was owed. And I was caught in the middle. I should have walked away. I should have packed my bags and left right then and there. But Pia turned, eyes glassy, looking at me like I was the only thing keeping her from drowning. "I don't love him," she whispered. "I chose you." And like an idiot, I stayed. I should have left. I knew I should have left. But something about the way Pia looked at me, like she was scared, like she needed me, made me hesitate. And that hesitation? It cost me. The lies keep changing. After she dropped the bombshell about the other guy, I needed to clear my head. I went for a walk, thinking, okay, maybe she panicked, maybe she didn't mean to drag me into this mess. But something didn't sit right. If she really wanted to escape this guy, why didn't she tell me sooner? Why keep sneaking around? I came back after an hour and Pia was sitting on the couch, staring at her hands. When I walked in, she looked up fast. "I need you to trust me," she said. I let out a dry laugh. "Yeah. Hard to do when I keep catching you lying. She swallowed hard. I was scared. I thought if you knew you'd leave. And then I'd have no one. She sounded genuine. Hell, maybe she even was genuine. But I had learned one thing about Pia: she could fake anything when she needed to. The threat arrives. I wanted to believe her, but the next day proved I was still missing pieces. I had just gotten home from work when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I picked up. Hello. A deep, calm voice. You should ask your wife what she's really hiding. A chill shot down my spine. Who the hell is this? Click. I spun to Pia, who was standing in the kitchen, pretending not to listen. Who did you tell about me? I demanded. Her face went blank. What do you mean? I held up my phone. I just got a call. Someone out there wants me to start asking more questions. For the first time, Pia didn't have an answer. The envelope returns. I wasn't about to sit back and wait for the next surprise. So that night after Pia went to sleep, I checked her purse again. The envelope was still there. I pulled it out, my hands shaking. Inside wasn't just cash. It was a marriage contract. With someone else's name on it. Signed. Stamped. Ready to be filed. And the date. 1 week before she married me. My stomach twisted. I turned to look at Pia sleeping beside me. Peaceful. Innocent. She had planned to marry this guy. Had taken his money. Had agreed. Then she found me and threw him away like garbage. And now? He was coming for payback. I sat there in the dark, staring at that marriage contract. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Pia had lied about everything. She was supposed to marry someone else. She did take his money. And then at the last second she swapped him out for me. Why? Did she think I was an easier target? Was I just the backup plan? I looked at her sleeping face, peaceful like she wasn't tangled in a web of lies. For a second I wanted to wake her up, shove the paper in her face and demand the truth. But I already knew what she'd do. She'd lie. Again. So I made a different choice. I slipped the contract back where I found it. And the next morning I followed Pia. Meeting the man she betrayed. She left the apartment like usual, saying she was going grocery shopping. But instead of heading to the store, she went 3 blocks down, to the same gas station parking lot. And he was there. Tall, well-dressed, calm. He didn't look like some thug or scam artist. No, this guy looked dangerous in a different way, calculated. I stayed hidden behind a car as they spoke. Pia was nervous, shaking her head fast. The guy, though? He barely moved. Just stared at her with this blank expression, like he was deciding what to do with her. Then he reached into his coat pocket. My breath caught. But instead of a weapon he pulled out a ring. A simple, silver wedding band. And when he held it up, Pia flinched. I couldn't hear their exact words, but I didn't need to. This wasn't just some visa scam. This man thought Pia was his wife. And now? He wanted her back. I clenched my fists as I watched them. Pia was shaking her head, stepping back like she wanted to run, but the guy didn't move. He just held up that ring, his face completely unreadable. I couldn't hear their words clearly, but Pia's voice was urgent, almost pleading. Then I caught one sentence. I told you it's over. The man let out a slow, quiet laugh. Not angry. Not sad. Just amused. Then he leaned in and said something that made Pia freeze. I didn't catch it, but I saw the way her shoulders tensed, her breathing quickened, like he had just whispered her worst nightmare into her ear. Whatever he said, it terrified her. She turned on her heel and ran. The guy didn't follow. He just stood there watching her leave, twirling that ring in his fingers like he had all the time in the world. Pia breaks. I got home before Pia and waited. My head was spinning. She burst in 20 minutes later, slamming the door behind her and locking it like she was afraid someone had followed. She jumped when she saw me sitting there. I leaned forward. Who is he, Pia? Her eyes darted around like she was searching for a way out. I told you. Stop lying. She flinched. I stood up. I saw you. I heard you. He wasn't just some guy you owed money to. He thought you were his wife, Pia. He held up a ring. She pressed her lips together, shaking her head. It's not like that. Then what is it? Silence. Then, so softly I almost didn't hear it, she whispered, I was never supposed to marry you. A cold chill ran down my spine. What? She sank down onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. It wasn't supposed to be you, she mumbled. I was supposed to go through with it. I was supposed to marry him. I swallowed hard. But you didn't. She lifted her head, eyes red, voice shaking. Because I realized he was dangerous. My blood ran cold. Pia's voice cracked. I thought if I disappeared, he'd forget about me. But he didn't. I shook my head, trying to process. So what? You picked me as some kind of shield? Her bottom lip trembled. She didn't deny it. That was all I needed to know. The realization. This wasn't a love story. This wasn't fate. I wasn't her hero. I wasn't her savior. I was just a body in the way of a bigger problem. And now, I was trapped right in the middle of it. I stared at Pia, my stomach twisting. You used me, I said quietly. She didn't answer. Just wiped her eyes, looking guilty. Before I could say anything else, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. That same calm, deep voice. You should ask your wife what happens to men who betray me. The line went dead. I looked up at Pia. She was already crying again. She knew exactly what that meant. My hands felt numb as I lowered the phone. What does he mean, Pia? She wouldn't look at me. He's trying to scare you. I took a step closer. Has he hurt someone before? Silence. Then, in a small, broken voice, she whispered, Yes. My heart pounded. And now he's coming for me? She squeezed her eyes shut. I don't know. Liar. She did know. And so did I. I wasn't going to wait around to find out what this guy had planned. We need to leave, I said. Pia looked up, eyes wide. What? I'm not staying here to be his next target. If he's dangerous, we go. Tonight. She hesitated. I can't. I clenched my jaw. Can't or won't. She didn't answer. That was it. I grabbed my keys. Fine. But I'm not sticking around to see what happens. As I headed for the door, Pia grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight. Desperate. If you leave, he'll come for you first. My stomach dropped. I wasn't escaping. I was already caught. I yanked my arm free. So what? I just stay here and wait for him. Pia shook her head fast. No. I can fix this. I laughed dryly. Fix what, Pia? You lied, you stole his money, and now he thinks I took his wife. There's no fixing that. Her hands trembled. Just give me one more day. Let me talk to him. I stared at her. You really think he'll listen? She swallowed hard. I don't know. But she was hoping. And that scared me more than anything. I took a deep breath. You have one day, Pia. One. Then I'm gone. She nodded quickly, but her eyes were full of doubt. She knew this wasn't going to end that easily. That night I barely slept. Every sound outside made my heart pound. Every shadow felt like him. By morning, Pia was already dressed, gripping her phone. I'll handle it, she said. I didn't believe her. And deep down I knew, no matter what she told him, this wasn't over.
Bye.